Well, like we said, we wanted to kind of look back on 2019 and kind of looking forward. So I think one of the big things we want to talk about, and we've talked a lot about on here, is our Fiber 9600 project. I think if we think about this whole sort of next decade mentality, I think that fiber is really one of those projects where we were really trying to think ahead to the future. And I think that for me, I know as I've looked at this project come to, its beginnings and its fruitions, and we actually lit up some houses, it is really, it's really cool to see that it actually happened, and I think, we've got some of the first homes and businesses lit up with our Fiber 9600 network with Allo. And, what does this mean really for the town in terms of the future?
Well, having a broadband fiber network is something that we debated and studied and talked about for several years, actually, before we started construction. And there was obviously some debate about whether this was something as a local government we should be getting into, because there are private companies out there that in some cases provide this service. Although certainly in our area, we knew that we were not going to be an area that was going to be on any company's radar screen to come in and lay fiber anytime in the near future. So, the town council during our discussions really looked at fiber as another utility for the town. It's a necessary part of being able to, as you stated, prepare ourselves for the future and to provide a basic service. It's no longer just considered a luxury to be able to access the internet.
Right.
It basically is a part of our life. It's the same as turning the faucet on and having water come out, and turning your lights on and know that they work, the electricity. People expect there to be internet access, and quite honestly, good, reliable internet access, and that wasn't always the case.
Right.
So that certainly was one of the driving factors for us looking at this. Like many communities across the country, and also in Colorado, we're seeing many communities taking the lead in putting this in and running this. So that's the direction that the town went, and we decided to. We're not going to run the utility. We did contract with Allo, which is a company out of Nebraska, and has actually been very successful at putting fiber in several communities in Nebraska. We will be the second one in Colorado that they're under contract and working with.
Yeah, because some cities have managed it themselves and created a whole new department, but we wanted to do that private-public partnership, which we do a lot.
Yeah, and it's certainly an option, but like anything, sometimes there may not have been the local expertise here that, the people that know how to dig the trenches, how to do the installs, how to splice the fiber, we would have had to hire those people, train those people, probably bring some of those people in from other places, employ them. And quite honestly, we just felt it made more sense to contract that out with a successful known provider who knows what they're doing, instead of us trying to learn it as we go. So.
And understands our area, being just up in Nebraska, not too far away from us.
And Allo is very committed to being a part of our community. They've leased office space in downtown, I believe right off of Adams and Main Street. They'll have an office that will be staffed there so people can walk into it. I'm sure many people that have seen the Allo trucks, the white trucks with Allo on the side around town most of the summer, and there certainly was a lot of disruption with the construction this past summer during our phase one, although it wasn't all us.
Yeah,
but
there was some other stuff.
We did get blamed for a great deal of that, but we were, in most cases, we didn't have to close the roads down. We just were over on one side laying kind of the backbone of our network. So.
So we've got that kind of core piece in, and we have gone and watched, we watched one of the first homes get lit up, like we said, and some businesses are getting hooked up. And have you personally heard any feedback about how people are enjoying the service?
I've heard nothing but great comments. Obviously, it's doing what we wanted it to do. There's not one of the things that people will notice if they have fiber is you won't have kind of that roller coaster up and down where you're competing against other users,
right.
and is able to flow more data through that process. And so, if you buy a 300 megabyte service, you're going to get 300 megabytes. It's not up to 300, where you may only have 50 on a really bad day, and then if you're lucky, you may have 175. This is 300 up and down, and so that's where people are noticing it. Those people. So there were some. What did we call the handful of
friendlies.
people? The friendlies that they hooked up the latter part of December, just while they were testing some of the connections and making sure that everybody's working. There was a couple businesses that got lit up during that time period to test the business along with the residential. And so far, it appears everything is working well. So the plan is next Monday, actually, starting on January 6th, they will be in now kind of going through and just starting to really light up the homes that are on their list that have signed up for service.
Definitely.
And that'll be going on primarily through the whole month of January.
Right. And we'll talk a little bit more about what is going to happen with fiber in 2020, but I mean, it's so exciting to see a project kind of start as this grand idea, and what if we did this to actually a reality, and it's fun to see.
It has. It's been a tremendous amount of work, and I tell you, we couldn't have done it without our assistant town manager, Shannon Haynes, who has led the project from the town's perspective and done a fabulous job, but she's probably learned more about this than she ever thought she would.
Yeah, I think Shannon is a fiber expert now.
But it has been a lot of coordination, between Shannon, our Public Works Department, our Engineering Department, and working with Allo. I think it was a very successful summer and construction period in 2019, and we'll see a very similar thing in 2020.
Yeah, and as we look to the future, like you said, it's so important for public safety, for utilities, for work, for school work, for our first responders. So, I think, I believe we're one of the first sort of resort communities to construct our own network.
Well, I think certainly in our region, I'm not aware.
Yeah, in our region.
Other people have bits and pieces of fiber going through the community for particular projects, but we've kind of laid the architecture for it to kind of be in the majority of town. It may never, it possibly not in the near future, won't be all over town, but certainly it'll, the plan is to cover a good part of the community within reason over the next few years.
Yeah. Well, now, looking on to 2020, there are also a lot of exciting new projects, kind of returning back to Fiber 9600. We're moving into that second phase, which is going to be a little bit more of the core of town and extending beyond that. So maybe share a little bit about what that next sort of development piece is.
Well, we'll continue. So when we built kind of this core circle, in 2019, from there, and right off of that core was the Wellington neighborhood and the Lincoln Park neighborhood. And we know that that is, a very densely populated area that has a lot of locals. And so that was kind of the first area that we were committed to in 2019, trying to get the fiber to the home for those people that were interested. And so in 2020, we're going to be looking at how do we branch off. So how do we come off of Wellington? We're looking at the Weisshorn neighborhood, which is again, a well-established neighborhood that has a lot of locals. And we're in the process of trying to put together kind of a little survey to put out into that community and gauge their level of interest. What we really, there's a very significant investment for us to just go off of Wellington Road on one of these side streets and run it down and then take it to the homes. And if we're going to do that, we want to make sure that we have at least 50% of those homes or something in that area have a level of interest in this service to make it worth our while. And so that's one of the neighborhoods I think we're going to be continuing to go into, the Vista Point neighborhood, which is off of there in 2020. So part of 2020 is just continuing to expand it from the core out into some neighborhoods that are within a close proximity.